Thanks to our Patreon members for helping to make this episode possible, and we're now available on all the major podcasting platforms. You can find more information at the links below. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Primates Go Wild. Now, this is, as I mentioned last time, a huge turning point took place as the feedback from literacy and changes in social organization led to increased life expectancy and birth rates and survival rates and food production and wow, everything, the hockey stick of the world population went up. And this helped feed into and was reinforced and became what in retrospect was called the Industrial Revolution. Now, when the Industrial Revolution starts again is, under debate exactly what you mean. But I want to talk about aspects of the Industrial Revolution that I think are rarely reflected on, not that the things that people talk about like creation of factories and efficiency of production and steam and all those are very important, and I will touch on those. But I think what's underappreciated is simply the rate at which the world was transformed. And this is where the monkeys start to go wild, both in the sense that they're just doing amazing things at incredible speed and things are changing super rapidly. And they go wild in the sense of we have not adapted very well, I would say, even today, to the changes that began before the Industrial Revolution. Then it got accelerated during the Industrial Revolution and continues today. So what has happened, and what I would say is one of the things we're struggling with as primates today, is the rate of change has accelerated to the point where we no longer adapt well to our environment. And I'll talk about what that means and what we see happening when you reflect on the coming of the industrial age that grows out of our sort of hockey stick population growth from encounters with the New World, the technological innovations, intellectual innovations primarily being applied across all the range of human activities all over the world. Now, generally speaking, just to get a sense of this, I was trying to find what numbers would help us out here. And so one of the things I thought of is, okay, it's 1800. So the Industrial Revolution has started by now, but it's just getting well underway, right? So generally the Industrial Revolution has put some time in the late to mid 1700s. And like I said, now the population has already started to boom. So for population, for reference, by the way, 1800, 1 billion, 1892, 1.6 billion, 1980, 3 billion. So, you just have this, again, hockey stick population growth, but it's just the population of the globe is expanding. The monkeys are multiplying dramatically in this time period. But if you wanted to go from Paris to London in 1800, this was minimum 3 to 5 days, and you could die because you're trying to cross the Sound in these little boats. And if the tides were against you or a storm blows up or weather was bad either on England or in France, then, you're going to have trouble because you're talking like 2 to 3 days of coach travel across France. And so, a bridge can be out, the roads could be muddy, a storm could come in, bandits could waylay you, right? So there's all these potentials for problem, but you're talking to get from Paris to London is 3 to 5 days in 1800. By 1900, now you've got steamships and you have trains. These are both good things for travel. And so your travel time between Paris and London is 7 to 10 hours. Now, just think about that. 7 to 10 hours, and your steamship, because it's steam and not sail, is very reliable. It's going to make it almost certainly at the time, because if the tides are against you, it doesn't care. If a storm blows up, you don't really care unless, it'd have to be a sort of epic-making storm. But generally, they don't care. And once you get to the other side, you're going to take a train to Paris. And so that train doesn't stop. It runs at regular times. It's, the speed. So 7 to 10 hours door to door, London to Paris. So this is cutting your travel time from days, literally 3 to 5 days, and with a not tiny possibility that you could die, or if your ship gets stranded or gets blown off course, it could be weeks. This happened all the time. If you read histories and biographies, you're like, oh yeah, we set off for Paris and the tide was against us, so we just ended up sailing back, and then we waited for 2 days when the weather changed, and then we sailed off again, and so yeah, we made it in a quick 8 days or something. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh, not is it just 7 to 10 hours, it's a reliable 7 to 10 hours. So you've cut your time by, I even know how to calculate that because it's both time and reliability and certainty. So you've increased that dramatically. By 1930s, so it was cut by whatever, a factor of 10 or something like this between 1800 and 1900. And from 1900 to 1930, with the introduction of air travel and the availability of air travel after World War I, it was about 2 hours. They started having these high-speed flights from London to Paris, and your air travel time would be about 2 hours, which is actually not much less than it was today, right? Today it's a little less than that, but not much. I actually recently took this flight, which is why I was thinking of it, and we were stuck on the taxiway in Paris for some reason for almost as long as our flight was between Paris and London. So, it's your efficiencies you gain in the air and you lose on the ground these days. But so really your travel time today is probably not all that much faster than it was in late 1930s where their high-speed planes were introduced. So what does this mean? Well, what it means is you can look at a single life, and the life that jumped out at me because I'm reading a material related to him today was J.R. Tolkien, and he was born in 1892, and the world population is 1.6 billion people, and it takes a long time to get from Paris to London. And his city is not, when he grew up, his little village did not have electricity, so he grew up before the age of electricity. And he lived until 1973, so the population of the globe increased by 140% in his lifetime. It also moved from rural to urban at an incredible rate. So the urban centers exploded at the expense of rural environments. And by the time he died, there was jet travel. So he grew up, came of age before flight was around, and by the time he died, there was satellites orbiting the Earth and jet travel. And it's easy for us to stand around and go, oh, yeah, we know this. We know the history. We understand what happened, all these things. Oh, this is great. And it's like, yes, but don't forget that the rapidity of that change is very difficult for the primates to process. Like we just don't understand it. Like it's hard for us to get our fingers wrapped around what's happening because on one hand, we're building this world. We're making it happen. As I mentioned last time, the biggest revolution, I would argue, is the cultural intellectual revolution built around the spreading of knowledge, the application of knowledge, and the recognition that what is in our minds, what we imagine, can be built. And that now that we have literacy and education and systems to support this, that knowledge can be passed on very quickly, shared, amplified, tested, and then passed on again. And it is the discovery of this process, the sort of formalization of it, that just dramatically accelerates the rate of change. But the evolution of the monkeys doesn't change. Like the monkeys are not getting all that much. We're still the monkeys. We're still there. We've tapped. We maximalized this part of our capacities that started being reflected back to us in our world. But we're still the same monkeys. And so this transformation is terrifying. And just as an example of the rate of change, is if you were born in the year 0 or the year 100 AD, what you would find, and again, I picked this because, of course, this is Roman Empire time, it would have taken roughly 4 to 6 days, maybe a little longer if you were on foot, or if you're trying to take a wagon, it would take much longer to travel from Paris to London or London to Paris, either direction. But what you see is 1,000 years later, it was slower than in 1700, 1800, but not a lot slower. The roads got improved somewhat by 1800. There were more bridges. But a traveler on horseback the sailing technology was better, but a traveler on horseback in 100 AD is going to be maybe a day slower than a traveler on horseback in 1800, which is shocking. Like, it's just shocking. So there was some advance, maybe a 10 or 15% advance in the travel time between Paris and London in 1,000 years. In the next 100, that travel time is cut, again, by a factor of whatever, 10. And then the next 30, it's cut a half again or a quarter again. I mean, so it's just that ramp of change. And again, it's not the travel time speed itself. It's simply the rapidity with which these changes are taking place. And so, again, I was looking this up for travel time and estimating all this. And again, these are estimates, and it depends on what you're doing. But one of the capitals of the Roman Empire was Ravenna, about 200 miles from Rome. And to get a wagon from Rome to Ravenna took weeks. This was not a few days, because a wagon is going to, travel maybe a couple of miles a day, maybe a little less, maybe a little more. But in total, you're talking about 2 to 3 weeks to get a wagon from Rome to Ravenna, which is to say you didn't send a lot of stuff by wagons if you could possibly avoid it. A traveler on horseback could maybe do 4 to 5 days. And by the way, these are the best roads in the world at the time, or some of the best roads in the world. And so if they had a special post system back in the day that would allow high-speed messages to be sent by galloping horses, so you could gallop a horse from one post stop to the next where fresh horses would be waiting. If you had that capacity, then you could do it in like maybe 2 days, maybe a little less in a super emergency, but then you're going to injure your horses because you can just run them to death doing that. It's very hard on the horses. So what's remarkable is up until basically the invention of the train, the rate of progress of anything across the planet was the rate of walking. You can walk as fast as a horse can walk, and a human can walk farther than a horse can walk at that pace. Now, horses can run short distances more quickly, and so again, if you have a post system, you can do that. But for most of your applications of moving goods, moving messages, moving people, you just walk. Like the wagon trains, they go, people took the wagons out west. They didn't ride in the wagons. They had all their stuff in the wagons, and oxen or mules or something were pulling the wagons, and people were just walking. They were there because that's how fast wagons go. You don't sit there; you just walk, right? Everything is at the pace of walking, give or take. It's not until you get trains, which, think about this. Now we're talking, early 1800s, so a little earlier than that, but basically trains start connecting major cities like Birmingham to London is like, I think, 1830s, right? That you start having increases in speed of anything that's been faster than ever. When the people built the pyramids, they were traveling as fast as when they, than the American Revolution. Like, the speed didn't change. This was the speed at which things moved around the planet. This is the speed the monkeys were used to moving. And then one day, that 2 or 3 miles an hour that somebody can walk got turned up to, a decent high-speed train back in the day going 50, 60 miles an hour. And you're like, whoa, right? So this is and this is what I'm trying to communicate, is this was not a tiny change. This was a miraculous multiple change. And man, did it confuse, and I think to this day still confuse the monkeys. The primates are struggling to deal with this. And what do I mean by that, and why do I think it's so important? So again, again, population increase, technology increase, transformation of the world that we live in. So electric light being an example, right? When you get electricity, you get electric light, which means you have light at night, which is a revolution. For most of human history, most of the population did not have light at night. Candles was expensive. Kerosene was expensive. When it got dark outside, it was dark. So that was the behavioral habits of human beings. And, as primates, we just got used to this for our entire evolutionary history. Now, again, the wealthy people had candles. They talk about this, but they also talk about the expense of candles and the fact that, often these large chateaus or these big castles or these, big houses in New England, these kinds of things, at night they would have like one room that had a fireplace burning and two candles or something. And there used to be this a saying that said, is the game worth the candle? And what they meant is, are we doing something that makes actually making the expense of the candle worthwhile? That's because candles were expensive. Is it worth the cost of entry? Because that candle's going to cost a lot of money. So these were expensive. And so you just didn't do things at night. I mean, give or take, when the sun went down, it got dark and you stopped messing around. So these kinds of transformations, that monkeys can be nocturnal, holy cow. We've got light. We like light. We're going to be up. We have electric light. Hugely transformative. And just multiply that by everything. And so again, in a single lifetime, you have someone like J.R.R. Tolkien who goes from living in a rural village, small, agrarian, primary means of transportation, horse and cart. Horses and carts. This is how you got around. By the time he dies, the city has been absorbed into the greater metropolitan reach of Birmingham, so it's been industrialized. Their landscape has been, as far as he's concerned, destroyed. Machines have taken over. You drive around in cars. You fly on airplanes. You move across the earth on trains. Wow, like spectacular alteration in the experience of just day-to-day life, our expectations, our understandings, our visceral sense of the world. It is just completely altered. One of the shifts also that took place during this time is the move from water-based economies to land-based economies, because before this innovations in transportation that take place with steam functionally and rail and iron and the harnessing of all this, everything, you just basically had to move anything by water. You used rivers, you used canals, you used sea trade. And so generally speaking, the First World War is considered to be Napoleonic Wars because all of the colonies of France and England and the Dutch are all involved in supplying, being attacked, attacking other people, being interdicted for shipping purposes, trade is being cut off, economies are being attacked, and this was global because, of course, these are global empires that are involved. And so, wow, here's your first global war right around 1800, and this is before trains, but all of this, or not all of this, but most of this is focused on water. Then, when you get to Tolkien's war in World War I, it's a land-based war. Not that there weren't land-based wars, by the way, but all of a sudden you have a global war, a lot of which was not associated with ports and water transportation and these kinds of things, although that was incredibly important still. But all of a sudden you have planes that are on the scene, you have trucks that can transport goods, et cetera, et cetera. But even here, the transportation with trucks that seems to us so obvious and so natural, when the German quote-unquote blitzkrieg heads into France and into Russia, most of their transport was still horses and wagons. This is World War II, not World War I, World War II. They were still heavily, heavily dependent on horse and wagon transportation in the 1940s. And so, imagine us thinking about going to war today and going, all right, well, we got to get a lot of horses and we got to get a lot of wagons because we're going to have to transport all these goods, and that's how you do it. It just sounds like madness, right? And even now, I think it's hard for us to imagine because we've all seen war films and movies about World War II, and they don't show a lot of horse and wagons because we can't, we want historically accurate war films, but we don't want historically accurate war films because we don't really have the capacity to rethink our history and understand how recently we've moved away from animal transport, how recently the horse and wagon ceased being a central calculus in doing any sort of moving of anything across the planet. And this has completely completely and totally disoriented the monkeys. So our sense of time, again, since the time we were in primates all the way until at least 1850s, but I would argue later, but at least, pick a date, say 1900, until you have the widespread adoption of electricity, probably, but maybe with kerosene coming on and oils starting to be used, get artificial candles, and you go, okay, now light becomes increasingly available, gas lighting in some major cities, and okay, so now at night you can have light. And when this happened, everybody got excited. But there's a lot of evidence that our sleep cycles and our health is still somewhat disoriented and deranged by the fact that we're continuously exposed to artificial light. And it causes, people have trouble sleeping. It's upset our dream cycles, our natural biorhythms get destroyed. And then, again, not saying this is a bad thing. Hey, I'm pro-natural, I'm pro-artificial light, right? I like to read at night. This is one of my favorite activities. But holy cow, you almost can't imagine a world, which is what almost all the primates lived in for almost all their history, where that just didn't happen. I mean, it was difficult to do that because the light at night was so expensive for almost everybody involved. And that we're just used to that. So we just assume that we're going to throw off our sleep cycles. We just don't pay any attention to it, even though we're still primates and we still try to need to get our circadian rhythms oriented to sunlight. But when we use all the screens that we use and all the artificial light that we use, the evidence is just shockingly clear that this is harmful to the monkeys. Now, it might be worth the trade-off. I'd probably say it is. But it doesn't mean it's not harmful to the monkeys. It creates psychological and physical stress. Industrialization also led to the move from primarily rural spaces to primarily urban spaces. And as I mentioned before, this is a absolutely devastating transformation for the primates. We evolved to try and absorb a very limited number of people. I'm convinced, based on no evidence whatsoever, by the way. Not no evidence. No, I have no concrete, utterly convincing evidence. But I'll make the argument anyway. But just I want to put the caveat here that I'm convinced by this from external logic. I don't even know how you would prove this with internally or with unassailable evidence. But if anybody can find some, I would appreciate it. But if you look at lots of early cities, and lots of early social structures, they would break the cities up into small departments and they would limit the ability of people to move within those various regions of the cities. And even within that, they would make people this wasn't just once, it's happened all over the time, Ottoman, Turkish Empire, Roman, places in the Roman Empire, Venice, this happened all of China. They would make you wear clothes that identified your trade, your group, your social status, basically uniforms. Everybody had to wear uniforms. So we limited the mobility of people, by the way, particularly women who often were not allowed to leave the houses except at certain times of the day. And the people who could move, we made them wear clothes that made them readily identifiable. And we're like, great, I know, I can recognize at a distance at least what you do and what kind of person you are. If you're wearing a fez, then I know what religion you're about. If you're wearing these kinds of shoes, I know this. And you can't move around very much. So I'm not going to encounter all these strangers anyway. It's a fairly recent innovation to have just a free love city where, everybody goes where they want, they do what they want, they live where they want, they can wear what they want, all of that. That's a very modern innovation. And oh my gosh, do the monkeys not like this? I mean, on one hand, we like it because we want to go where we want to go and we want to wear what we want to wear and we want to be with the people we want to be with. But we don't like it at the primate level because we're constantly encountering strangers. And one of the most difficult things that our culture has been struggling with is what do you do when you're enmeshed in a world of strangers, but you're still a primate who desperately, desperately needs to be in environments where you recognize all the people you encounter, or else you aggress on them, or or you get your primate friends to aggress on them, right? This is wow, this is so disorienting. And I mentioned this before, with how neighborhoods are structured and that our classrooms are often the size roughly of primate groupings. I don't think this is a mistake because we are continuously put in environments that we just aren't even evolved either culturally or sort of biologically in the mix of those things to deal with. We're just not good at it. We hate, like, people hate open floor plan offices. All the evidence is clear. It stresses people out. It makes them unhappy. And they go, oh, it's noise, it's distraction, it's being watched, it's all this. I think, part of it, all that's probably true. I'm no one arguing against that. But part of it too is it's too damn many monkeys. If I'm in an open floor plan office with 70 people, that's too many primates. I need to be in an environment where there's 5 primates because I'm good with 5. If there's 5 primates in 4 offices around me, that's 20 primates, and I interact with the other ones fairly regularly, I'm good with that. If I'm in an open floor plan office with 100 primates and there's other primates coming and going for various reasons, I'm unhappy. I'm unhappy not because of my job, not because of anything else, but because this environment is devastating. Like, I can't deal with it. I can't address it. I don't know. It's just not primate. It's not primate healthy functionally. And these transformations happened so rapidly, and they continue to happen so rapidly, that we don't know how to adjust. We're just struggling to figure out how do we deal with this? And so this is the development that I think is just, people do comment on it, but I don't think we really get our hands on it and go, oh my gosh, like, we're still primates and we're being transported not from, a primarily rural world to a primarily urban world. We're being transformed into spaces that transformation is happening way too fast for us. Our culture can't adjust, we can't adjust, and the changes aren't stopping. It's not like the small rural village that Tolkien grew up with just got electricity and then people adjusted that and went, great, now we've got electricity, we can deal with that. No, they got industrialization, the car, train travel, planes, television, radio, newspapers delivered every day, and being incorporated into a major urban center all within one lifetime. All functionally overnight when you think of the thousands of years that this has been going on. And so if you can take an Egyptian peasant from 2000 BC and take him to rural England in 1700 AD, so 3,700 years later, and definitely going to be shocked at some changes. So I'm not saying there's going to be nothing there, but the speed of travel, no, that's no problem. Like that we're doing agriculture. We're doing different kinds of ag, I recognize. But I understand. I recognize agriculture. I recognize irrigation. All of this makes sense to me. I'm not going to be thrown wildly out of my conceptual world. But then all of a sudden, yikes. Right? Like, holy cow. And people recognize this at the time. This is where the William Morrises of the world come on. This is where poems, the dark satanic mills, they're not looking at this going, oh, well, nothing big's happening. No, everybody was like, wow, something really, really big and overwhelming is happening. And we don't know what to do about it. We don't know what the implications are. We don't know how to incorporate it into our lives. We can't adjust fast enough to take up all of the changes. I mean, what the hell is going on? And it's like, right. Yes. Yeah, right. And this is the key here. It's not stopping, right? The change, and maybe even the rate of change, if it may even be accelerating. I don't know. It's tough to measure these things. But anyway, the rate of change is still going on at an astounding pace. But primate evolution, social evolution, our capacity to reintegrate ourselves into worlds that make us feel good and healthy and comfortable just simply does not operate at that pace. So it doesn't matter how fast change happens. We can't. Like, we're not capable as a group, as basically primates in these weird environments that we're creating, of adapting nearly fast enough to have a good sense of what all this might mean. And so this, I think, is one of the most underappreciated elements of our struggles today. And I put this back to that delta that started in 1700, really gets running with the Industrial Revolution. and just has never stopped. And everybody wants to talk about, oh, it's steam, oh, it's, metal, it's air travel, it's electricity, it's telecommunications, it's, all of this. And I'm like, yes, it is all of this, and more. But I think the key, or one of the things that underlies all this, is simply the delta of change. That thousands of years of slow evolution, slow development of communication, development of education, development of better agricultural technology. Oh, look, here's iron. We're learning how to work with that. Oh, we're building better sailing ships. Like, if you can look at the evolution, and in historical terms, you look at it and go, wow, this has taken a long time for these changes to take place. And again, I love to use the population of the globe to track this, because you can see, oh, we're doing a little better at living. Oh, we're getting a little better at agriculture. Oh, we aren't dying quite so much. Oh, and you can just see that slow growth. And you're like, wow, this is pretty good. We're doing better. And then kapoof. But that explosion of population is also tracking an explosion in change. And those changes, although created by the primates, they are expressions of the primate imagination, tracked to our capacity to reimagine, and again, to the way the world is. Wow, there's no evidence that we are keeping up with this, right? We're doing it communally. It's a communal project, but it's a communal project about which we just have almost no grasp. And one of the things I find endlessly just fascinating is we will tell ourselves two simultaneous things. One, we will say, wow, we live in a time of change, and change is happening so rapidly, which everybody goes, yes, yes, yes. And they go, and yet when you ask them about things or talk to them about things, their assumptions are almost always as if tomorrow will be like today. And that yesterday and yesterday and yesterday, all our yesterdays will be our tomorrows. Even though we can articulate at one level, like, oh God, no. Like, the change is just spectacular. What I think smartphones have been around like 15 years now, something like that, and they've just, wow, talk about impact, like massive impact in 15 years. I think it's the most rapidly adopted technology in history. Where you go from just, let's call it 20 years. 20 years ago, nobody had one, and today, like, more people have smartphones and have access to clean water is one of my favorite statistics. So, and that makes sense, by the way, because clean water is much more difficult than smartphones, right? The digital technology turns out to be facile in some ways, whereas water turns out to be tricky. And so we struggle with things like water, but oh yeah, cell phone, here you go, cell phone, but you can't have clean water. Like, wow, what kind of crazy world is that? But it turns out primates need clean water. And just because you have a cell phone doesn't mean you don't die of dysentery, right? This is the bizarre never land that we find ourselves in. And that disorienting and continuously disorienting rate of change that we've been immersed in runs up against this basically slowly evolving social primate underlayer that, in fact, informs everything that we do, because we are just primates. And so, of course, people articulate it this way, because our primate selves say, oh, yes, all our tomorrows will be like all of our yesterdays, because this is the primate of approach to the universe. That's how we've looked at it. This is what we've been doing for time immemorial, to the point where, and this is one of the things I love about doing historical research, is the calendar systems are cyclical, right? We go, oh, why does our calendar restart every year, right? Why does our calendar restart every year? It's kind of odd. We move the year forward, and then we restart the calendar, right? So we have this notion of cyclical repetition, that we're just doing the same thing over and over and over and over and over again. And primarily, this is a calendar for agriculture. It's an agricultural planting calendar, so you know when to do things related to the agricultural season, so that we all don't starve to death. So that evolved over thousands of years. But now this calendar, one, is pointless, because we don't live in that sort of agricultural world. We don't need a group coherent and agreed upon date keeping system so that we don't starve to death from agriculture. But we keep it anyway. We like it because we like to imagine that our world is cyclical and repetitive, and the same things happen over and over and over again. it's incredibly comforting to the primates. Even though, as we know that's not the case. We absolutely know that this will not, that we know that in 2 years we have absolutely no idea what the hell is going to be going on. But we hate this idea. We loathe this idea. And so what we do is we substitute our primate underpinnings over the top of this world of incredible social, intellectual, cultural, economic, scientific, every kind of change, delta. Like it just is that rate of change, we just cannot tolerate it. And so one, we want it to go away. Not to get political, but this is the genius of the Make America Great Again slogan. It is functionally a very appealing slogan to the primates, because what it says is we can make our tomorrows like our yesterdays. And the one thing we know is that our tomorrows don't feel like they're going to be like our yesterdays, and it's driving us mad. We find it very disorienting. And you can see all kinds of resistance to this. Like, again, Tolkien, wrote indirectly or pretty directly about this, about the fact that he did not like to see the rural and green and pleasant land, as it were, of England overrun by industrial technology. And he wasn't the only one. Like, again, Morris, there's just so many thinkers, not just in England, but all over the world, have said, hey, we don't want to see the world destroyed by this industrial monster, the shibboleth that is just, overrunning the planet. We haven't figured out how to stop it yet. We're not good at preventing it from happening, but we really would like it not to happen, or at least many, many, many people would really like it not to happen, because we find that environment much more appealing and much more life-giving to many, many of the primates. You see this in children's books, by the way. So a lot of authors have talked about this, not just me. It's an original idea with me, but like so many famous children's books and not children's books are set functionally in either rural or very small community environments at a time when, most of the population lives in urban, highly dense settings in very urban environments. Like, so why do we do that? We do that because for the primates, it's just much more appealing, right? At some fundamental level, we think that it would be better. Like, now we're choosing to live in cities because of like job opportunities. It's more exciting. It's all the reasons that primates love to move to cities. So I'm not saying that primates don't also love cities. It's just that we're both attracted to them and we find them wildly disorienting and health destroying. In fact, so much health destroying that it was until I should have looked this date up. It's very late before like London and Paris were not net killers of people. And so it used to be that you had to have this continuous migration into cities because cities were, because of disease and bad sanitation and all this, cities killed people faster than they produced them. And so you need a lot of migration from cities, from the rural to cities. And there was a lot of opportunity because the people that went there just died at a really impressive rate, which is, interesting, I guess. But it's sometime in the 1800s, I think, late 1800s, when London stopped killing people faster than it produced them. And it's like, wow. That's kind of incredible when you think about it. It's how unhealthy, unpleasant, life enriching for the primates it was. And even today, again, even though people love cities and move to cities and all the things, cities, it's like, we're still very, right? We still have this vestigial sense like, cities are immoral, they're dangerous, we shouldn't go there. Something bad is going to happen. It would be better if we all lived in some rural idyll, and people imagine this and strive for this and believe this while they stay in cities, right? So it's even though we've moved along from that, for at least vast majority of us have, in the developed world at least, we still have this like resonance. It's still there. And it's still there because for thousands of years, the agrarian monkeys got used to it. And the rate of change for the agrarian monkeys was not that great. It was just really, really, really slow. And then it wasn't. And so much of what is driving the primates mad today is, I would argue, and this is the point of all of this, of course, is not any particular aspect of the modern world. And we always like to point to something in particular. And it's not to say those things aren't problematic, whatever they are. It's, strangers, violence, industrial overrun, environmental destruction, whatever the problems are. Sure, yeah. But I think underlying that, the dis-ease, the communal sense of wrongness, the dysphoria, if you will, that you find expressed in so many ways is not trackable back to any of these in particular. It's trackable to the rate at which these changes have been pressed upon the monkeys, whether they want them or not, and our inability to adapt at this rate. We just can't. We're not. So our minds, our imaginations are vastly more flexible than our primates are as in totality. And so you can look at any particular problem. Oh, pollution. Oh, yeah, look, hey, air quality is way better in much of the world than it was 50, 60 years ago. We've done a great job with that. Like in some ways, you can go, well, hey, good on us. Look, we've done pretty well with air quality. Why don't we feel great about that? Well, we don't feel great about that because the 97 other things that have changed in the meantime, right? Like we got on that one, we kind of focused on it, but now there's 87 other, all these stuff just keeps changing, and we can't. It's too much, it's too many, it's beyond our capacities. And so it's not like, oh, you have to get used to the world, you have to adapt, you have to find it. It's like no, it's like saying somebody, oh, you have to just drink the Pacific Ocean, and you're like, well, I'm pretty sure I can't drink the Pacific Ocean. It's like, right, yeah, you can't. Like, so what do you do in an environment where you're like told to drink the Pacific Ocean, but you can't? How do you adapt and address and incorporate and function in this endless cycle of change when you're a primate and you're not able to do that? Like, that, I think, is the crux of where we find ourselves. And so lots of writers I've talked about all kinds of aspects of this. Everything, again, I've talked, Morris, Tolkien, the socialist movements, the Marxist movements, the ecologist movements, modern utopists, Philip K. Dick, right? You can see all kinds of, like, what is going on? How do we deal with this? How do we address it? But the focus is, again, generally on, if we can crack this problem, if we can get the global warming thing, if we can get distribution of resources, if we can deal with wealth inequality, if we can make urban cities more pleasant to be in, right? It's these little piece, which, again, is a very primate response to our problem because that's what we can handle intellectually. But if you look globally, if you kind of zoom out, and you look at what we're actually trying to deal with, we're trying to deal with a world in which, hey, when we're born, like, again, Tolkien is such a great example. His village doesn't have electricity. Trains exist, but there aren't very many of them. He doesn't have a car. He actually never learns to drive, I believe, in his entire life. Horses are everywhere. 2, electricity, TV, radios, satellites, men in space, planes everywhere, jet planes everywhere. I mean, his city is gone. Industrial technology is overrun. The world's population has increased by 140%. I mean, wow. Like, it's just not primate friendly. And curiously, and maybe this will happen at some point, I have no idea, but curiously, there is probably no way to make it primate friendly. Right? The primate imagination, the primate capacity to learn, to develop, and to change, and to imagine all those things has far outstripped, again, the primate biological entity that has to exist in the new places that have been constructed, the new social and institutional and environmental places where we find ourselves. And I would say that the transition from primate to human is probably this. One way to think of the human, or at least this is my own way, take this for what it's worth, is as this really, really primate in a problematic situation. Like, our human capacities, our imagination, education, science, all of these incredible outcomes of the human ability to learn, or the primate ability to learn and imagine, past, present, future, everything we've talked about, has scaled to the point where it's no longer primate. It's now human. But that process of becoming human, we've not left the primate. We're still there. And to me, really the human condition, if you said, what is the human condition? I'd say a lot of it is simply this. And I think we've done a poor job, or we tend to do a poor job on reflecting on our modern condition when we don't recognize this. Because again, we focus on individual parts, little pieces, granular details, because that's what the primate mind can handle. When in fact, it is simply the change, good or ill, it's the rate and nature of change that we're continually subjected to that the primates have virtually no capacity to incorporate. And it's slowly or quickly, I think, driving us a little mad. And there's a lot of evidence for that, which we'll talk about next time. So, primates go wild, and I mean wild in many senses of the word. But I think it won't take very much reflection on our own lives if we each stop and think about the changes we've seen in our lifetimes and the kinds of pressures and disgruntlements that we feel to go, oh, yeah, my primate isn't very good at this rate of change, right? Like this is just like, yikes, holy cow, this is a struggle. So again, don't believe me, but take a moment and reflect on this and reflect on the lives of the people you see around you. Reflect on the world perhaps that your grandparents inhabited versus the world that you inhabit. And I think you'll get a sense of like, oh yeah, wow, what an extraordinary pace of change we're enmeshed in. Thank you very much.